Ellie, and I'm with Green Village Initiative. And tonight, for our Harvest Fest workshop session, we're going to be talking about how to preserve foods to save money. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to do this is to talk a little bit about some of the most popular crops that we grow in Bridgeport and ways of preserving them throughout the winter so we can enjoy them all year long while supporting our local farms and farmers and making sure that we have nutrients and vitamins from our soil in our freezers. So tonight we will be preserving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different crops in 1, 2, 3 different ways. So cucumbers, which all seem to come in at the same time off of the plant, native to Peru and very popular for pickles. We'll be making those into fermented pickles tonight. We'll also be fermenting okra, which is also another amazing and popular crop that we love to grow on Reservoir Community Farm here in Bridgeport. And when you have a lot of okra, it's hard to keep them all because they taste so good. But if you can keep some and stop yourself from eating all of them in one go, it's great to trim the ends. And we're going to be fermenting those too for a tasty treat you can keep in your refrigerator for months and months after the harvest. We're also going to be doing some freezing for other crops. We'll be practicing 2 types of freezing. One is called blanching, which is a word that just means you make the leaves hot before you cool them down and freeze them, as well as something called dry freezing, where you just put the raw plant into the freezer. So today we're going to try blanching these collard greens so that we can preserve them for Thanksgiving. Both okra and collard greens are popular in the American South. They were brought to the US through the African slave trade, but they actually originate in different places. Collards originally come from Greece. Okra, actually the oldest types of okra are believed to have originated around the Ethiopian area, but you can actually see them being cultivated by the Egyptians in some of their ancient works and art, which is pretty impressive. So they made the journey together to the US. And then over here, the things we'll be dry freezing will be Bok Choy, which traditionally we sell them in little 6-packs during our reduced price seedling sale at Reservoir. And if you plant 6 of them at the same time, you've got 6 heads of bok choy that you gotta eat really fast. So it's actually really fun to freeze some of them so you can throw them into stir fries later in the season or even next year. So I really love bok choy. From the name of it, it's obviously a native of Asia, specifically China. In 2000 BC, we have some of the earliest types of bok choy there. At our farm, it goes by the name pop chow because it's called pop chow in Jamaica and the West Indies because, again, of the slave trade in the West Indies for different crops that were being cultivated by various colonist European countries. We were actually bringing folks who were of Asian and Chinese descent over into the Caribbean islands. And so that's how pok choy made its way into Jamaican dishes and achieved the beautiful name of pop chow. We'll also be dry freezing some peppers. So peppers, natives of Peru, along with potatoes and tomatoes, they're very, very close cousins, are another plant that when you have a lot of them, you have a lot of them. And sometimes you're not ready to make your fermented hot sauce or you're not ready to make your sofrito right away. So you want to be able to freeze them and have them for later. So we're going to be exploring all these different ways of preserving our harvest to prolong the taste and to also save nutrients and vitamins right here in your own kitchen so that you can access that all year long, while also creating some really beneficial places to create bacteria for your gut. Believe it or not, even though we believe bacteria is a bad word these days, and in some cases it is, especially with the pandemic, we are actually killing a lot of bacteria, 99.9% with wipes and with sanitizers and sprays. We're killing good bacteria with bad. And when you ferment vegetables, you're introducing and welcoming good bacteria to come work its magic in this food, make it taste delicious, and that works its way into your gut in a way that we call probiotics. Some people take vitamins for it, but you can make it right in your kitchen. So the key is don't get overwhelmed. I know, take a deep breath. Making all of this is super affordable, very easy. It just takes a couple of key ingredients. So for our fermented okra and the pickles we'll be making, all you need is a measuring spoon, a rubber band. You can use either a towel that you have, or if you don't have a towel, a clean towel around, you can just use a regular paper towel, and that's all you need, along with a clean glass jar. I like to use glass and not plastic, because plastic can hold on to those bad bacteria we were talking about, and I wash it out with really hot water in order to get it nice and clean ahead of time and sterilize it. And the other item that you need for pickling is just salt. All you need is water, salt, and your vegetables. If you want to get fancy, and I don't mean to be, it's just that I like a lot of flavor, I have this very old pickling spice that is from my mother's spice cabinet, probably from like 1998, that still has a lot of flavor. And on Reservoir Farm, you can come by and visit us. We've got horseradish leaves that we're growing there, and I just usually harvest one for all of the pickling I'm going to be doing, as well as dill, which grows as a weed all over the city. We have that growing as well. I like to put the tops in because they're funny and yellow and friendly, and they bring a great flavor to your pickled items. So what I'm doing now is preparing my okra. These are a little bit burned from being in the refrigerator a couple days too long, but they're still quite fresh. And so our okra, I'm just trimming the edges of them off. Because this area here can get a little bit softer, but I find the stems to stay kind of tough even after fermenting for a little bit. And you don't have to worry about making them all perfect. I'm just able to because I am a voice on a YouTube video, and that's what they tend to do. But you can do this however you want to. Keep the stems on if you want to experiment. And also know that at any point in fermentation, you have the power to decide what flavors you're looking for. So remember to add, whatever spices kind of suit your fancy. If you want to make it hot with a hot pepper or hot pepper flakes. If you want to add something weird, you want to try throwing in something unusual, do it. Like, there's really no way to mess up. I think that's the joy of fermentation, is that the flavor decisions are all yours. And today I'll be just making some basic flavors of garlic and salt with a couple of other herbs, but you're welcome to try whatever you want. And now it's time for our fermented pickles. So while most pickles you get from the grocery store are made with vinegar, and that makes them shelf stable, aka they can travel, they don't have to be refrigerated till you open them up. The ones we're making with our fresh garden cucumbers, given to me by my friend Bobby's mom, who grew them in Stratford. We're actually just going to be combining them with salt and some of my mom's old pickling spice. You can use pepper if you want to. I'm also going to throw in, the end of this is a little mushy, so I'm not going to put that in. You want it to be a fresh cucumber, and I'm going to put in some fresh garlic as well from my friends Will and Jill at Hungry Reaper Farm in Morris, Connecticut. They gave me some beautiful garlic, and I really want to make these pickles pretty garlicky because I'm Italian and I love garlic, and I know most people all over the world love garlic. Whoop. Let me grab that. So I'm putting some other flavor in here with the garlic, and like I promised before, I also have dill and horseradish I'll be putting in. Here I have my my water. It's 2 cups of water into just a regular glass jar and 4 tablespoons of salt. It's 2 tablespoons to a cup. I'm gonna get it to dissolve. And while I do this, I like to just practice thinking about how delicious I want this food to be, how I want to call in good energy to it. You might think it's woo-woo. I think that water, because we're made up of so much of it, really does focus our energy a little bit. And it's nice when you're doing this to kind of think about how everyone, I don't care who you are or where you're from, I don't care who you are, all of our ancestors did this. All of our ancestors had to find ways to preserve food, and this is 2 ways of doing it. Freezing is obviously something you can only do in colder places, burying it nice up until modern technology, but preserving the salt is done all over the world in a bunch of different ways with meats and vegetables. And I think, it's obviously part of survival and making your harvest last, but it's also a practice. I'm gonna start throwing in some of that dill I promised before. I'm just like to pop it in there with clean hands. But as I was saying, it's also a practice of hope, because it means that you believe that in the future, there's going to be other people to share this food with. There's going to be hopeful times ahead to nourish your body. And sometimes you need to practice hope mindfully. And I think that, preserving food for the future is a way of doing that, because it's something to look forward to and a way of looking back on your harvest as well. So I'm just trying right at this moment. You can see it's not an exact science. I'm just shoving cucumbers into this salty water. You want it to taste like seawater when you taste it, nice and salty. And now I won't be able to fit all my cucumbers in because it looks like my water's gotten to the top here. And one thing I didn't mention before is that if you're having trouble with, I like to skim things off the top so that they don't try to attract any mold. So I'm getting these seeds out. But if your cucumbers are popping to the top, trying to come up, same thing with your okra. A little cheat that I have is I gathered some rocks from the beach, and what I do is make sure that they're nice and washed off, and then I put them into boiling water. I boil my rocks on my stove, and sometimes that's all the weight you need to keep it held down. So this one is good and at the top. I'm just gonna wipe it off a little bit. Maybe actually, I'll pour a little water off. Okay, good. So our rock is underwater, all of our food is underwater. That's gonna prevent it from, instead of decomposing, it will ferment if it's underwater. And then I'm just gonna, next up, just take my paper towel. Then when we're talking about freezing, again, simple ingredients and simple process. The most expensive thing you probably don't have in your kitchen already and will need to get for freezing is just some heavy duty freezer bags. I've got some new ones here because I didn't want to freak you out, but I really like to reuse them. Reusing plastic is important to me because you can reuse these a bunch of times as long as you rewash them, and there's no need to spend that money getting fresh bags each time. In fact, with some of the hot peppers we sell at the farm, I actually like to freeze them in the bags that I bought them in, which is a cool technique. So all you need is freezer bags and a pot of hot water and some ice cubes. In the case of our collard greens, after you've chopped them up on your chopping board with your knife. And in the case of the dry freezing items, which we're not going to be blanching or putting in hot water, these just go right in raw. All I use is usually a towel to wipe down the dirt off of the Bok Choy before I put it in. And in the case of peppers, I just chop them and throw them right in the bag. So nothing fancy needed. So here we have Bok Choy, which has been grown and cultivated in China and throughout Asia for the past
like 5,000 years. It's an amazing vegetable. It comes in many shapes and beautiful colors, as well as microgreens. Right now I'm taking off the outer leaves that are a little wilted, maybe don't look so good. And I'm going to chop off the root piece, this beautiful part of the bowl, and get off any kind of dirty base leaves here. And my reason for not actually washing my bok choy underwater the way that we would with the cabbage or collards is because bok choy is not going to be blanched. We want to actually keep it as dry as possible before we freeze it. So instead of bringing my bok choy over to the sink and washing it, I'm actually going to just wipe the dirt off with a wet towel. Now that it's looking pretty green, pretty clean, I'm going to take off the leaves, checking for dirt as I go, just wiping it off really gently. And then as I get a stack of leaves that are clean, I'm going to start putting this bok choy into freezer bags. While I am not a huge proponent of buying plastic bags, because they do take 5,000 years to break down in the landfill, folks, I am a fan of not having freezer burned food, so you have to pick your battles. And I really like to reuse mine, so try to reuse your bags as much as you can. So with bok choy, what I do is I take a bag like this, and because we don't really care if it looks perfect or not when it comes out, you can always fold them and get them in. You want to try to take up as much space in the corners as you can. Take a few more leaves just to fill this out. Notice how much of the bok choy can fit into a freezer bag. It's pretty impressive. And I like to use my bok choy over the winter for stir fries. So good in soups. And sometimes it's just a nice green thing to add at the end of, you're making a meal. It's beautiful, but it's all shades of brown and neutral colors because maybe it's a bunch of potatoes and rice or something. It's just really nice to have something fresh and green that you actually grew to throw in there and connect you back to a good summer season, beautiful harvest, times when you could be outside in the sun. I always like to say that eating vegetables in the winter is tasting summer sunshine. So we're able to fit a couple more in here. And now comes the fun part, where if you don't have a vacuum sealer, you can use, nature's vacuum, which is like our breath. What I'm gonna do is pack my bok choy down, a little bit more, doing great. Seal the bag, and then leave a little area here to breathe all the air in. If you're not comfortable doing this with your mouth because you might be sharing food or giving it to someone else, you can always use a straw for this as well. And you just vacuum and seal. Wonderful. So what I like to do typically with bok choy to kind of ease it into the freezer is put it in the refrigerator for a few hours first to get nice and cold, and then slide it into the freezer so that it can complete the freezing process. And when you take it out, I just will throw it in cold if I'm getting things going in a soup. And you can choose to thaw it for a little bit as well. So what you see here is a stack of Reservoir Community Farm collards grown here in Bridgeport on top of bigger collards. And I'm actually just rolling them together into a little tight log of collards. And my reason for this is that if I do our next step, which is called blanching, I'm going to be blanching a whole collard green, and it's gonna come out of the freezer bag ginormous. So I like to make it smaller so that I can make it to smaller, more manageable sizes for the freezer bag. I might not wanna make all my collards at once. Maybe you do. So do it however you like. This is just my method. But blanching, that word, sounds like Golden Girls, or it sounds like work. But either way, all it means is that we are going to be putting our collards into hot water and then cooling them down. So we're going to be breaking the cell walls a little bit so that when you put these bad boys in the freezer, they are not, you're not having the actual cell walls break inside the freezer and get full of ice. But instead, we're going to break them ahead of time so that they're soft when they go in the freezer. And then when they come out, they're not going to be kind of mushy and oversaturated by ice, but instead nice and fresh. So let's head over to the stove. So here we are at our boiling water that we've had going over here. Some folks like to add salt, not I. And now I'm going to take those collards we just chopped and just pour them right in. And that is where they're going to be for about 3 minutes, more or less. I'll set my kitchen timer. Oh, don't we look fancy? But we're not. Our other oven just broke the other day. It's a brand new oven. I guess it is fancy. I know we're fancy. So anyway, as you can see, as we put it in, they're turning this bright, beautiful green. So I'm gonna let them do their thing and stay nice and hot for 3 minutes. And when that timer goes off, you're gonna see our next step, which is to put them into an ice cold bath. All right, so our collards are done. You can see that they're bright and fresh green. And so now what we have to do is actually stop the cooking process. So we're putting lots of ice cubes into a little ice water bath in the other sink over here. And ladle by ladle, we're gonna put these into here to stop these hot collards from cooking. It's important to get them to stop cooking so that we can preserve their flavors. The reason we do the blanching in the first place is so that if you put raw collards in the freezer, those ice crystals are going to form inside, of course, but they're going to actually leach out some of the flavor when you go to cook them. So right now we're trying to, while they're nice and fresh and delicious, preserve the flavor inside of the leaves before we do our bagging process. So make sure you got a nice cold ice bath to move these little guys into. So now that our collards were done cooling down in their ice bath, I drained out the rest of the water, and the goal for right now, it's a little bit of an arm workout, is to actually squeeze out as much of the water from your collards as you can. Do your best. It's okay. It's a good hand workout, honestly. Get you nice strong fingers. But what you're gonna do is actually squeeze them. I like to squeeze them into like a ball. And the reasoning for that is that it creates a really easy way to portion them out of freezer bags. So instead of having one very large chunk of collards, or you can do this with kale, turnip greens, like honestly whatever greens your heart desires, kind of in the brassica family. Once you get a mostly dry little ball, I like to create a number of these and actually freeze them in these little hand-sized bunches. And then the second step after you have a good number of these is to place them onto a tray, such as this fine one here. And you just pop them into the refrigerator to cool them down, and then into the freezer. I always take that extra step with the fridge. You don't have to, and feel free again to experiment as much as you want. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And once these are frozen, that's a good time to put them into your freezer bag and try to eliminate as much air as possible. And so throughout the winter, you can just grab a handful for a lunch by yourself, or use a whole bag if you're making food for other people. There's nothing more frustrating than having to use like a whole block of kale when you just really wanted a few pieces. So again, simple. You're gonna roll up your collards, chop them however you'd like them, put them into their boiling water for 3 minutes to blanch, then the freezer bath, and then this fun part, which is the hand workout, making them into these awesome hand-sized little nuggets of collard. Ugh, getting lots of that water out, documented. And then from here, again, onto a tray, into fridge and freezer, and then into your freezer bags for as long as you want. And you can have your fresh greens harvest all season long.
So I chopped most of our hot peppers and have it, like I promised, in the bag that I bought them in from Reservoir Farm. And I wanted to share with you this one that had a little baby pepper growing inside. But the great thing about hot peppers, oh my gosh, look, another baby pepper. The great thing about peppers is you can decide your heat, and I am not a total baby, but mostly an infant. So I'm taking out a good number of the seeds here with a spoon. You can wear gloves to do this so you don't hurt yourself. And all you have to do is pop your peppers in your bag, close it up most of the way, except for a little bit right there. See that amount right there? And that's where I'm going to, if you're not comfortable putting your mouth on it, you can use a straw. You're going to suck out the air. And it's good to be frozen. So we've done so much tonight, from these blanched collards that I'm going to put into a bag for the freezer, to our fermented pickles, fermented okra, our dry frozen Bok Choy, and these soon to be dry frozen hot peppers. Just as a heads up, when you suck the bag, it will make your mouth hot. Mine is quite hot right now. But we've preserved so much food together, and I'm really excited that you've watched our video, that you're excited about preserving and taking care of the bounty that you've grown. At Green Village Initiative, our mission is to grow food, knowledge, leadership, and community through our network of school, community gardens, our youth program, and our farm, all in the purpose of really growing a food system that is one that is just and equitable, and growing your own food and preserving it as part of that. It takes us out of this culture of buying and having other people determine our food for us, and really taking it back and doing what we love, and what connects us back to the earth and our bodies. So if there's other vegetables that you want to preserve, leave them in the comments. If you'd like to teach a GVI workshop, please let us know. We want to hear from you. There's so many skills and so many farmers and gardeners out there with ideas, not only for growing, but preserving their harvest. We'd love to hear it. And be sure to smash that like button if you like our content and you want to see more of it. You're a part of our community too, and we hope you'll check back for more of our videos in the future. In the meantime, happy growing, and take care of yourselves and stay safe and healthy.
Bye.